everyone, hope you're all well and welcome back to my channel. I wanted to make a video that was purely about paper today. I finally got round to making this time lapse of this double pug pet portrait, and the reference photo I was given was fantastic. It had a lot of contrast in it though, and I'd recently been having issues getting the very, very dark shades on the paper that I was using. So I just wanted to speak a little about that really. So when I first started drawing, I was just using whatever paper I had, to be honest. I think one of the wildlife drawings I did were with charcoal on textured paper, and I didn't really give much thought to the paper or what I was using at all. I just used whatever I had. So then as time's gone on, I'm now creating pet portraits using smooth paper, or I was using smooth paper and graphite. And I was finding it really, really challenging to get the dark shades on smooth paper because it's not as textured. It doesn't hold as much graphite as the textured paper that I'm using here. So yeah, I kind of was having a few issues with that and ended up using black polychromo pencil, like colouring pencils, to try and really get those darker areas on some of my other pet portraits. So I thought I'd give this paper a go. I first started using smooth paper because I was watching a lot of videos on social media, and there was an incredible artist who was doing amazing hyper-realistic human portraits on smooth paper using charcoal and getting very, very dark shades. So I'm sure, I mean, with all of the options out there for paper and materials and everything, I have not even scratched the surface with what I've used and what I have experience with. So yeah, always very, very grateful for any tips or tricks. Please write anything in the comments if you can help me. So yeah, I just started with smooth paper because that's what I saw that she was using, and obviously I was like, oh great, I want to be like her. I'll use the same paper, which obviously is not really the way it works. So I've been using smooth paper for a while. The reference photo I was given for this pug pet portrait was fantastic, had a lot of contrast in it, some very, very dark black sections, as you can see, even from what I've drawn so far. So I wanted to try a textured paper, as I'd been watching some coloured pencil tutorials, and they were talking about how you obviously have to layer up the different colours. It's not a case of kind of just going in with one colour, but building from base layers up to create different hues and the depth of kind of fur, for example. So I figured, well, maybe I can do the same thing with graphite. So I had to go with this. It felt, it was quite nerve-wracking to begin with because it made me, I wasn't getting the same results in the same way that I was with using smooth paper. And I was finding it quite challenging to get very kind of sharp fur lines and kind of very clean lines, with an eraser. So that was quite frustrating to begin with, but then I started obviously realising that I have to sort of build up the graphite with the textured paper as well, the same way that you would with coloured pencil. In hindsight, I think that actually a really good technique for this piece may have been to use an embossing tool to get those kind of spiky hairs that you can see around the eyes. I think that would have been really effective, and with my experience since doing this pug pet portrait, I have used that tool more. But it kind of very much depends on the type of fur that the dog has as well. If it has very, very smooth fur, then you don't necessarily need to pull out a lot of individual hairs. But for this one, it would have been great. One thing I did find with the textured paper, which might be quite obvious, is that I had to sharpen my pencils a lot more. Obviously, the paper holds a lot more graphite, and so the texture of the paper obviously wears down the point of your pencil quite quickly. So yeah, used a lot more graphite with this. the detail, as I said before, in this reference photo was absolutely fantastic. But it was also quite intimidating. When I zoomed in very, very close, a lot of the time I couldn't work out what was going on. I couldn't work out what was skin and what was hair, what was fur, what was what was what. So I just had to sort of trust what I could see and just draw what I could see, so that then hopefully when it was all put together it would have the correct effect. I am fairly happy with how it turned out. As I say, I always kind of think that we're our worst critics, and I'm always very aware that I have a lot to learn with every portrait that I do. So yeah, hopefully I've learned new techniques with this. So I didn't actually film a lot of this second pug. It was a lot darker than the top one. I'm sure other people do this as well. With the reference photo, what I'll do is take the shadows out, or increase the contrast, play around with different elements of the highlights and the shadows. That's the great thing about having a digital reference photo instead of a printed photo. Is that you can kind of manipulate the reference photo to see depths that you wouldn't necessarily see straight off with the naked eye. So it's very useful, for example, for very dark sections of the dog, to take the shadows out to lighten the photo quite a lot, so that you can see the definition, the way that the fur moves, and then go in and sort of add more graphite over the top, so that then you're sort of adding the shade, the depth afterwards, but you've got a basic underlying map of where the deepest, darkest kind of crevices are of that particular piece. I've actually just remembered, over lockdown, obviously deliveries of everything were delayed, or restocking wasn't happening. So I actually had some real problems I was trying to get large sheets of smooth paper for some kind of future projects, and I couldn't find it anywhere, or I couldn't find the make that I've been using. Everything was out of stock, and it was saying that it would be in 4 to 6 weeks, and I'd wait, a couple of weeks, and it would say 4 to 6 weeks. So it was I couldn't find it. I'm not really sure what happened with that. I don't know if it's been discontinued, but that also sort of pushed me to do a couple of pet portraits on paper that I wouldn't necessarily have chosen. But it's definitely pushed me outside of my comfort zone, which I think is a really interesting situation to be in as an artist. For me anyway, I found it very, very, very easy to find something that I think works. If one particular portrait works, then I'll be nervous to try a different paper, a different medium, because I'm sort of want to stay safe with what I knew worked last time. But the problem is, and what I'm learning now, is that I've seen so many artists who have the ability to draw, paint, sculpt, everything. They can do everything on all different surfaces, and I'd love to be able to offer that in the future. Maybe kind of watercolor pictures, and find some different styles with different mediums. But it's also quite challenging to do that when you are sort of when customers come to you and they see your previous work, and they sort of expect that again. I guess you can't necessarily provide them with a totally different style if they've seen your previous work, and that's what they're basing their commission on. In the past, I found it quite challenging sometimes to get as much depth and the light and shades right. I think I still sometimes struggle with that. It is a style as well. I know some people who do incredible kind of monochrome looking pieces at really high contrast. But yeah, So here's a final close-up of the final piece. Oh, two amazing reference pictures. So much character in these. I think it's really challenging to get a reference photo showing so much character. It's brilliant, and it really makes all the difference to the final piece. So yeah, really privileged to have this piece. Anyway, everyone stay well. Hope you have a lovely week, and hopefully see you soon.